George Russell has done the unthinkable. In The Gilded Age, Season 4, Episode 1, rumors begin to swirl across New York's glittering ballrooms that George, the man who once stood fiercely by Bertha's side, has been seen in the company of another woman. For years, the Russells have been the symbol of strength, power, and loyalty in a world obsessed with appearances. But now, whispers of betrayal threaten to destroy everything they've built. And what's even more shocking is that this scandal mirrors a real story from history, one that tore apart one of the most powerful marriages of the Gilded Age. What if the cracks we saw in Season 3 weren't just drama, but foreshadowing of the same heartbreak that shattered Alva Vanderbilt's life in reality? George Russell was never supposed to be like the other men of New York's elite. From the very beginning, he was different. A man who built his empire with his own hands, who defied old money's arrogance, and who worshipped his wife, Bertha, as his equal. Together, they stormed into society's gilded gates, turning mockery into admiration, envy into fear. But as Season 4 opens, something has changed. The air around George feels heavier. His eyes, once so full of ambition and warmth, now carry a shadow. And for the first time, Bertha, the unstoppable queen of Fifth Avenue, seems unsure of her place beside him. It all begins quietly. A dinner invitation here, a whispered name there. A mysterious woman rumored to be seen at the Metropolitan Opera, sitting just a few boxes away from the Russells, her gaze never leaving George's. Society moves quickly when it smells blood, and soon, Bertha finds herself surrounded by smiling faces that hide cruel tongues. "Have you heard?" they whisper. "Mr. Russell has been spending his evenings downtown, not at the office." The same man who once defied the old guard to defend his wife is now the center of the city's most dangerous rumor: infidelity. But this isn't just fiction. The real-life inspiration behind Bertha, Alva Vanderbilt, faced the same betrayal. Her husband, William K. Vanderbilt, was once charming, handsome, and devoted. Yet over time, he grew distant, distracted by the pleasures of high society and the attention of women who flattered him for his name. As Alva built their family's social empire, Willie built a reputation for scandal. He was often seen at clubs, racetracks, and in the company of women whose names appeared in the gossip columns. It didn't take long before his affairs became public, and the humiliation for Alva was unbearable. Julian Fellowes, the creator of The Gilded Age, has always drawn from real history, blurring the line between fact and fiction. So when we see George pull away from Bertha in Season 3, and the show begins Season 4 with distance, tension, and secrecy, it's impossible not to wonder if Fellowes is following the same heartbreaking path Alva once walked. Could George Russell's loyalty finally break under the weight of his own success? We must remember that George has always been a man torn between two worlds: the ruthless businessman and the devoted husband. In Season 3, he proved his love by standing up for Bertha's social ambitions, helping her fight her way into the elite circles that once rejected her. But power, once achieved, always demands more. As his empire expands and his wealth grows, George is surrounded by temptation: admirers, investors, socialites, and women who want to be near his influence. And while Bertha has been consumed by her own wars in Newport and New York society, George has quietly grown lonely in his victory. That loneliness is where betrayal begins. There are whispers of a young widow, beautiful, well-educated, and newly arrived from London. Some say she met George through business. Others insist she sought him out deliberately, knowing that a man like him, powerful yet emotionally neglected, was easy prey. The show paints her as sophisticated yet vulnerable, the kind of woman who can make even the most loyal man forget his vows. At first, their meetings are innocent, discussions about investments, philanthropy, and art. But late nights turn into private dinners, and private dinners turn into secrets Bertha is not meant to hear. And when Bertha begins to notice the changes, the missed breakfasts, the faraway look in George's eyes, the letters he hides, her world starts to crack. This isn't just about love anymore. For Bertha, it's about survival. A woman's reputation in the Gilded Age was everything, One rumor could destroy her status, her power, even her children's future. And worse, it would make her a social outcast. She had spent years proving that she was not just another rich man's wife, but now her identity, her empire, and her pride are all tied to the loyalty of a man who might already be lost. And the cruelest part? History suggests that Bertha's story could end just like Alva Vanderbilt's. Alva fought to keep her dignity while her husband flaunted his affair in public. She endured the whispers, the pitying glances, the judgment, until she finally did the unthinkable. She filed for divorce, the first of her kind. She risked everything to escape humiliation and reclaim her power. Could Bertha Russell be heading for the same fate? Will. The Gilded Age. Season 4 dared to show its most powerful woman lose her marriage and rise again from its ashes? Because if George truly cheats on Bertha, it won't just be a betrayal of love, it'll be a declaration of war. But what if George's affair isn't as simple as it seems? What if this betrayal hides a darker motive, one that could destroy more than just a marriage? New York's social world has always thrived on whispers, but this one spreads like wildfire. It starts with a single sighting. George Russell leaving the Waldorf late at night with a woman no one recognizes. The next morning, it's in every parlor, murmured behind teacups and painted smiles. The same people who once praised Bertha for her brilliance now pity her, disguising gossip as sympathy. Poor Mrs. Russell, they say. Even the strongest marriages can crumble. And though Bertha walks through her marble halls with her head held high, she can feel the walls closing in. The betrayal isn't confirmed, not yet, but the silence between her and George speaks louder than any confession. He avoids her gaze at breakfast, skips dinner altogether, and spends long hours at the office. When she asks him if the rumors are true, his answer isn't denial, it's deflection. "You know how people talk," he says, his voice cold, his eyes tired. But Bertha has lived too long in a world built on deceit to mistake evasion for truth. Something inside her breaks that night. The woman who once conquered society by sheer willpower now feels her confidence slipping through her fingers. Julian Fellowes has always shown us that the Gilded Age was not just about diamonds and dinner parties. It was about power, survival, and secrets. And Bertha's story now mirrors Alva Vanderbilt's descent into public scandal. Alva, too, had once pretended not to notice her husband's wandering eye. She ignored the laughter behind her back, the headlines that hinted at Mr. Vanderbilt's latest interest. But when the affair became impossible to hide, when William took his mistress, Nellie Newstretter, openly to Paris and treated her like a second wife, Alva's silence turned into fury. And that's exactly where Bertha finds herself now. Inside her palace on Fifth Avenue, she gathers her closest allies, not friends, for in this world friendship is currency, but powerful women who owe her favors. She learns who the mysterious woman is, a widow named Clara Winston, recently arrived from London after her husband's death. Clara has charm, wit, and a fortune inherited from her late husband's shipping empire. But what makes her dangerous isn't her wealth, it's her ambition. She's exactly the kind of woman Bertha used to be when she first stepped into New York society. Underestimated, hungry, and determined to climb. Bertha begins to see herself in Clara, and that realization terrifies her. Behind closed doors, Bertha's fury turns into strategy. She starts making her own moves, securing alliances, calling in favors, and subtly turning society against Clara without ever mentioning her name. The opera boxes shift, the invitations change hands, and suddenly Clara Winston finds herself mysteriously excluded from gatherings she once longed to attend. Bertha plays the game like a queen, but even as she strikes back, she knows this isn't just about social power. It's about her marriage, her pride, and her heart. Meanwhile, George is caught in his own turmoil. His business empire is under new pressure, strikes, financial rivals, and political scrutiny. Clara, with her charm and sympathy, offers what Bertha no longer can, the illusion of peace. She listens, She flatters. She makes him feel like the world he built hasn't consumed him. But what George doesn't see is that Clara's interest isn't love, it's leverage. She knows the power of proximity. Being seen with George Russell gives her status, and status in New York is more valuable than gold. When Bertha finally confronts him again, her voice doesn't shake. "If you've done what they say," she tells him quietly, "you haven't just betrayed me, you've destroyed yourself." It's not a threat, it's a prophecy. Because if history tells us anything, it's that Alva Vanderbilt didn't crumble under scandal. She weaponized it. When William's affair became undeniable, Alva didn't plead or hide. She filed for divorce. In a society where divorce was seen as disgraceful, she turned her humiliation into a revolution. Her courage inspired other women to follow, shaking the very foundations of the elite circles that had once controlled them. And maybe, just maybe, Bertha Russell will do the same. As the episode closes, Bertha stands alone at the top of her grand staircase, looking out over the glittering chandeliers that once symbolized her triumph. The ballroom that used to echo with laughter now feels empty. She knows what she must do next. But it will change everything. Will Bertha Russell follow the path of her real-life counterpart and risk everything for her freedom? Or will she fight to save the love that built her empire? Even if it's already broken. By the time the rumors reach Newport, it's no longer a whisper. It's a storm. The Gilded Age elite, the same ones who once fought for invitations to Bertha Russell's extravagant balls, now gather in seaside mansions and exchange sly looks as her name drifts through their conversations. "The Russell marriage," they murmur, "wasn't as perfect as we thought." Every glance Bertha receives is loaded with pity, envy, or amusement. But no one truly understands what's happening behind those polished doors. The quiet, unbearable tension between husband and wife, the cold silence that fills every corner of their home. Bertha's world was built on power and control, on the belief that she could shape her destiny through sheer will. But now, she realizes something she never wanted to admit. No matter how much influence a woman gains in the Gilded Age, her fate can still be destroyed by a man's mistake. One scandal, one betrayal, one rumor. That's all it takes. For a woman like Bertha, whose reputation is the foundation of her empire, this is more than heartbreak. It's annihilation. George, meanwhile, finds himself drowning in the very life he created. His empire stretches across railroads, steel, and shipping. A world of ruthless deals and endless ambition. Yet for all his success, he feels strangely hollow. Clara Winston's company fills that void. Her voice soft, her laughter effortless. She makes him feel young again, invincible, even innocent. But innocence doesn't last long in this world. Clara begins to overstep, attending dinners where she isn't invited, writing him letters that could ruin him if discovered. She knows she has power now, and George, blinded by guilt and confusion, doesn't stop her. Bertha, however, sees everything. She's no fool. She's always been the observer, the strategist. When George thinks she's retreating, she's actually planning her next move. Every humiliation she endures only fuels her determination. She remembers Alva Vanderbilt's story, how Alva was mocked, shunned, and yet emerged more powerful than before. Bertha begins to study her, reading every article, every account. The more she learns, the more she sees herself reflected in Alva's journey. A woman broken by betrayal, only to rebuild herself into something stronger. Then comes the breaking point. It happens during a dinner party at the Astor's mansion. The entire elite of New York is present. The same crowd that once scorned Bertha, then courted her favor, and now waits for her downfall. As the orchestra plays, Bertha enters the room wearing diamonds that seem to cut through the tension itself. Her poise is unshakable, her smile immaculate. But when George arrives moments later, all eyes turn. Clara Winston is there too, invited by the Astors as a cruel display of power. She greets George with a smile that's just a little too familiar, her hand lingering on his arm a moment too long. The room goes silent. The gossip that had lived in shadows finally steps into the light. Bertha doesn't flinch. She walks straight to Clara, every movement deliberate, every breath a declaration of strength. "Mrs. Winston," she says, her voice calm and measured, "you must be very proud. It takes real courage to attend an event where you're so deeply unwelcome." The words hang in the air, cutting sharper than any scandalous headline. Clara stammers, society gasps, and George, for once, looks like a man stripped of his armor. That night marks the beginning of the end. Bertha returns home alone. She sits in the grand ballroom that once symbolized everything she achieved, the chandeliers gleaming above, the scent of roses fading in the air. It feels hollow now, like the ghost of a dream. She remembers the girl she once was, ambitious, uninvited, and determined to be seen. And she wonders how that girl became this woman, trapped in a golden cage of her own making, betrayed by the man who helped her build it. In the days that follow, the city splits into factions. Some support Bertha, calling her brave and dignified. Others whisper that she's finished. The press begins circling like vultures. "Mrs. Russell's marriage in crisis!" the headlines scream, just as they once did for Alva Vanderbilt. The parallels are undeniable, and for Bertha, the decision that once seemed unthinkable, divorce, now feels inevitable. But this isn't just about vengeance. Bertha understands the cost of leaving. Women who divorced in her world weren't just judged, they were erased. Invitations stopped coming, friends vanished, daughters lost their chances at good marriages. Yet there's something inside her that refuses to bow to fear. She's spent years watching men rule everything, fortunes, politics, reputations, and now she's ready to take that power for herself. When George finally confronts her, his arrogance has melted away. He admits the truth. The affair, the deception, the shame. His voice cracks, his confidence gone. "I made a mistake," he says. "A mistake I can never undo." But Bertha's face is unreadable. The pain is there, but buried beneath it is something far colder. Resolve. "You didn't just betray me," she replies softly. "You betrayed everything we built." It's in that moment that Bertha Russell becomes more than a wife, more than a socialite. She becomes a symbol of survival, of defiance, of transformation. Like Alva before her, she refuses to be a victim of her husband's sins. A few weeks later, newspapers report the inevitable. Mrs. Russell has filed for separation. It's a move that shocks society, not because of the scandal, but because of what it represents. A woman of Bertha's stature choosing her dignity over status sends tremors through the Gilded Age elite. Behind closed doors, women whisper her name like a legend. Some pity her, some fear her, but most secretly admire her. And then, something extraordinary happens. Invitations that once stopped arriving begin to return, quietly at first. A dinner here, a benefit there. Women who once turned their backs on Bertha now see her differently, not as a fallen woman, but as a pioneer. They envy her freedom, her courage to act when others would have cowered. Society's rules begin to shift. Just a little, but enough to matter. George, meanwhile, faces his own reckoning. His business suffers, his reputation bruised, his name tarnished by scandal. He realizes too late that what he lost wasn't just a wife. It was the force that made him who he was. Without Bertha's ambition and brilliance, George Russell is just another rich man in a city full of them. In a powerful echo of history, Bertha follows Alva Vanderbilt's path not only toward independence, but toward reinvention. Alva, after her divorce, remarried for love, to Oliver Belmont, and transformed herself into a champion for women's rights. She hosted meetings for the suffrage movement, using her fortune and influence to fight for change. Bertha's story in the Gilded Age might not mirror that exactly, but the message is the same. When a woman loses everything, she finds out what she's truly made of. In the final moments of episode 1, Bertha stands before a mirror in her dressing room, the reflection of her jewels glimmering faintly in the light. Her face is calm, almost serene. She removes her wedding ring, places it on the table, and walks away. The music swells, and for the first time, we see not the wife of George Russell, not the Queen of Fifth Avenue, but Bertha herself, alone, unbroken, and finally free. Her story, like Alva Vanderbilt's, isn't one of tragedy. It's one of rebirth. Because in a world ruled by men and money, Bertha Russell dares to do what few women of her time ever could, to take control of her own destiny. But as the camera fades to black, one question lingers in every viewer's mind. Has Bertha truly closed the door on George forever? Or will Season 4 reveal that even the strongest woman can't fully escape the pull of love, power, and betrayal that defines the Gilded Age? One thing is certain. The war between pride and passion has only just begun.